DJ today. We're using the soundboard. We have a really cool special guest today on the podcast. And Chris, what do you think about the studio? You've been able to, Chris Price, lawyer, attorney at law. I kind of like that. I said he didn't want a formal title, but we like that, the podcast.
Yeah, formal's okay. Formal's okay. A little, usted. That's what we're gonna.
Yeah,
usted.
Usted, yeah, right. So, and you're all dressed up today. You're looking the part.
Got to play the part every day.
Yeah, no, it's great having you on. I know you came in last week to talk about future podcasts for you, and I think that'd be a great thing, right? So, we talked a little bit about that, and I said, listen, Chris, we really need to have a little bit of education on this whole estate planning and all that stuff. Here I am. I've been in law enforcement for 31 years. I've been in real estate for about 20, kind of a combination of both towards the end. And, I think my estate planning is real shitty, to be quite honest with you, Chris. I mean, why do we need to get this stuff?
Well, what kind of estate plan do you have?
Absolutely zero, really. I mean, I do, have money, I guess I would say. I have accumulated some funds over the years, but I really don't think I've got a good plan. I've got, every time they ask me, who's your beneficiary, I write that down, which is probably the minimum that I can do. And I probably need to start thinking about it, or I should have started thinking about it.
Well, it's like planting a tree, right? The best time was yesterday and the second best time is today.
Yeah.
So, today's a good time to talk about that. So as far as the estate plan goes, whether you have a plan written down or you don't, you still have a plan. So your plan, if you don't write it down, is determined by the Florida laws and the legislature. So if you die without a will, it's called dying intestate. And the Florida legislature has adopted laws that say who is going to inherit your probate property, right?
Right.
Alternatively, you can write a will, and that's dying testate. And that's, you get to pick who's going to manage your estate, who your beneficiaries are, and then how they inherit property. So you can either elect to do it yourself, or you got a plan anyway.
Yeah, I'd much rather have myself decide who is going to be having my, pool and, my house and all that stuff. Who wants somebody swimming in your pool that, might have been your buddy previously? I mean, who wants that?
Right. That's the pool boy problem, right?
That's the pool boy problem, right? Exactly.
So, yeah, 100%. So the idea is the estate plan not only covers what happens with your property when you die, but it's also during life as well. So as to make, who can make financial decisions for you during your lifetime, like through a power of attorney, who can make healthcare decisions for you as well in the event that you can't make your own healthcare decisions. I think, maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit, is the importance of a living will. So what happens if you become one of those three states, like a permanent vegetative state, end stage condition, or terminal condition? What kind of life prolonging procedures would you want to, be administered to keep you going or not to keep you going? So, so those are things that you can write down, elect to make, and that would be part of your estate plan.
Now, it kind of, to backtrack, should I, when should you start doing this stuff? What should I don't think it matters if you've got a risky profession, right? I think it doesn't. I mean, that doesn't matter at all. I mean, it probably adds to it, but you can drive down the street or walk out in the middle of the street and, your day could end.
100%. We, if we all had our crystal ball, then, I'd probably see clients right at the last moment, right? Yeah, it wouldn't waste your time or money. But the idea is, if you're asking me when you should have a plan, I mean, as soon as you're born, there's certain property rights that somebody has, whether it's to inherit from parents or, as in later in life, what you want to do with your property in the event you die. So there's really, as far as 18 years old, somebody can start an estate plan. I mean, if you're going off to college and parents are paying for a student's university bills and they want to have some access to the bank accounts and grades, having a son or daughter execute a power of attorney in favor of parents would allow that parent to have access to those records. Same thing with healthcare decision, but otherwise life events, right? So marriage, divorce, death, inheritance, those are kind of the times that you would look to form an estate plan. But really, if you have property, if you have stuff and you want to know where it goes and you want to make sure it goes to where you want it to go, that's when you should address the estate plan.
Yeah. And I agree. It's one of those things, though. It's like when you go to Costco, right? And you go out the checkout, and if you look to the right, you see you can buy your casket, right? So
it's only on the way out, right?
Only on the way out. So what I do is I push my buggy really fast past that. So what do you think, or give me an example of maybe a bad scenario that happened that would make us trigger to go see a professional like yourself, Chris Price?
Sure thing. So kind of the thing that's most front and center and on everybody's minds in the past 18 months is the pandemic, right? So in that case, we've had just so many tragic cases. So, think of the idea of somebody being, becoming ill suddenly, rapidly declining, going into the hospital, not having the ability to even see a lawyer. I mean, pre-pandemic, I would see clients frequently in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And when they restricted visitation, I can't get in there. And only recently, as far as last year, did we even have some electronic wills legislation. But the idea of getting an electronic will, like a DocuSigned will, is very difficult. And there's only some entities that allow it to happen. So you still need like wet ink on paper for a lot of these documents. So just the idea of having this kind of lack of access to professionals by virtue of being in the hospital is kind of almost too late in some cases. So sudden illness. My own father died of a heart attack, and it was sudden, so, fortunately he had his plan in order. But the idea is, we don't always kind of get the warning signs of saying we need to go do something. But the idea that you plan for it, you provide some peace of mind, you plan for what you know today with some contingencies for what's going to happen in the future. And you can change it and adjust it as time goes by.
So the old thought that you had discussions at the kitchen table of who's going to get what, really, when your life ends, it really doesn't work out all peacefully in most cases.
Exactly.
I can imagine.
And in some cases, and this is kind of a classic case where there's a lot of litigation around it, is somebody goes, okay, well, I have a life insurance policy. I'm going to, I have a couple kids and I want to name my, sister or brother as the beneficiary so that they can hold those life insurance proceeds in the event I die for their benefit. Well, years goes by, maybe there's a falling out in the family and that person dies. Beneficiary on the policy is now sister or brother. They kind of forget the idea of taking care of niece and nephew, right?
Right.
But in fact, the agreement was niece and nephew would have been, taken care of by sister or brother. So that's the subject matter of a lot of lawsuits, as far as what should have been properly planned for, placed in a trust for the benefit of the minors, et cetera. Could be avoided, again, just with simple conversation with an estate planning lawyer.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, we know that there's a lot of jargon that goes involved with it or comes with estate planning, right? So just a couple things. What's like an irrevocable trust, or revocable trust, I should say?
Yeah. So any trust is really like a private contract or agreement, right? So, I'll take you for example, right? If you're going to set up a revocable trust, the person that sets it up or creates it is the grantor, and that's you. Then we have somebody that controls the property, and that's the trustee. And then we have somebody that enjoys the property, and that's the beneficiary. So in that document, that written agreement, in the case of like a revocable trust, is something that during your lifetime, all the property that's in that trust is for your benefit. So if you were to set that up, you would be the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary during your lifetime. And then at death, the revocable trust becomes irrevocable. You can't change it. And then it operates like a will substitute. So all the things that a will can do in terms of transferring property at death can happen with your revocable trust after the grantor's death. So why would you have one? Three main reasons. One is to avoid probate. Domestically here in Florida. If you own property in multiple states, even timeshare properties or, investment real estate or, vacation home like in North Carolina, you would contribute that property to your revocable trust. So you avoid probate in North Carolina and in Florida at death, right? And then the third reason would be privacy. So when somebody dies, a will is filed with the clerk of court, and that will becomes public record. So for instance, if you wanted to go look up, John F. Kennedy's will, you can go get a copy of that will.
No kidding.
Yeah. And that's why you see this celebrity will kind of thing, is that, some celebrity dies, their will is filed with the clerk of court, whatever, it's public record.
Public record. Yeah,
exactly. So the trust is not filed. So there is some privacy element to it.
So the grantor is the giver, right? And the grantee or the receivers, correct? So, because a lot of times that gets confusing, like where am I in this whole process?
Yeah. So you're the grantor. So the person that creates, or the settler, right? The person that creates the instrument. And then the trustee is the one that, again, you can nominate, anybody to be, friend, relative, etc. to be the trustee, and that person controls the essentially, executes the trust. So they get to control who benefits from the property.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very interesting. So I know that I have a lot of friends that are in situations that have been pretty sticky and muddy when family members pass and things like that. If you don't have these papers in place, what could be the worst case scenario? I mean, it can get ugly, right?
Yeah. I mean, worst case scenario is where you think your property is going is not going there. So for instance, oftentimes, you have I mean, you can come up with dozens of scenarios, but one would be, okay, so you have a long-term relationship with somebody, but you were previously married and you never got divorced. Well, that person dies. Legally, they're still married to their prior spouse, but have a long-term relationship with their partner. And you go, well, I had intended that my partner would be the beneficiary, and, prior spouse or current spouse, I guess, comes up and says, I'm first in line and I have the rights.
It's going to me.
Right. Exactly. And then you
not sure who you are, but it's going to me.
Exactly. So that becomes, again, sticky situation. Children. So for instance, only natural issue and legally adopted issue are considered within the family line. So if you don't, if you don't identify those children within a will or specifically name them, and those laws of intestacy come into play, it's only really your natural issue, half issue, if you will, or adopted issue. So people that may have stepdaughters, stepsons that they're very fond of, have raised from zero, they're out of line as well.
Yeah, that's very important. And you mentioned COVID, right? So we talk about this next one. Is it important to appoint someone to make healthcare decisions for you? And I just say COVID. I mean, that doesn't include myself driving down the road on my motorcycle, wiping out, and next thing you know, I'm in a situation where I'm drinking from a straw. I'm not making light of that. It's just that's the reality, right? And then I've got people saying, "Should we pull the plug? Should we pull the plug?" Who, what happens?
Right. So your healthcare decision maker is nominated within your healthcare surrogate. So that's the document that you would say, if I can't make healthcare decisions for myself, I'm going to nominate this person, and in this particular order is who's going to make those decisions for me. And it's not only just if if you're in the middle of a surgical procedure, you're under general anesthesia, the doc comes out, says, who's the surrogate? Okay, raise your hand. We need to go one way or the other during this surgery, right? It's also the person that would elect or execute on a living will, which we touched on a little bit about that. But the idea is, so that surrogate's going to make decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself. And again, same deal if you're in the hospital, motorcycle accident, doctors need to contact somebody. That's who they're going to speak with. And in today's world, it's very difficult to go to a doctor or the hospital without having that question answered as to whether you have a healthcare surrogate. So they want you to create it. They want it in writing now. But again, before you walk into the ER, you should probably have that conversation or thought process in place.
Is there a way to do it? Like, obviously, you never know if something tragic happens to you, but is there a way to do this? What's this process? How long does it take? Or could it take?
It can be as rapidly as, I've met with folks who are in hospice, and so we expedite obviously whatever plan that we need to make. The best plan is probably to have some thought process behind the plan. Goal is try to, if you can get it done within a month or two, that's great. But it also, everybody's at different speed. So, if you have some considerations of what you want to happen, or there's not an urgent need, it can take as long as the clients need it to take.
Okay. Very good. Now I know we don't want to really talk about cost necessarily, because I'm sure it ranges depending on time, and with the lawyers, right? We know how that goes. It's billed by time, but for a basic setup, range wise, what would something like that go for?
So you're right to identify it. So the kind of cost range across the board. So see some advertised costs anywhere from, we're going to do a $500 will and then a trust for 500 or something like that. Typical costs, I think, for the Naples market probably would be for single individual to do the will, the advanced directives and the like, probably at least probably in the range of 1,500 or so, maybe even starting from there. For trust planning would probably be north of 2,000, north of 2,500, something like that. The idea with the trust planning, for married couples, obviously increase and the like, and complexity of plan dictates more cost. Some folks do it on flat fee. Some folks do it on time. Personally, my practice is 95% of the planning is flat fee, and that covers everything from, initial meeting, conversations, emails, phone calls, drafting of the plan, execution, and then getting you set up to make sure that your property is going to go where it needs to go.
Yeah. And that's an unfair question, I think, because the complexity of everybody individually is going to be different. So I'm sure it's a little bit tough to get a pinpoint, but there's probably people out there going, it's going to cost me 10 grand. I don't want to spend 10 grand. But the reality is, depending on your circumstances, it's probably well worth that money, even at a lower price than what you thought it might be. So that's kind of the direction I'm going, for myself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the idea that each plan is unique is really true, because everybody has their own situation. And some folks would be in the position of saying, okay, well, maybe maybe we're not looking at a huge estate, but we're looking at a pretty complex setup because of our beneficiary situation. And then other folks may be, in a very, having an estate tax problem, where in today's world, we don't have Florida estate tax, but we do have federal estate tax. And currently that exemption per person is $11.7 million. So for a married couple, you can transfer close to $24 million estate tax free, right? That's a problem, and probably a good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
So then you come see me, and the idea is we can help you out with that. But again, high exemptions, more problems, more complex solutions. So that's kind of the approach.
Right. Let me ask you this. So I know we have availability with online forms, get your trust, $99, things like that. What are, I'm sure there's people that do that, and I'm sure there's people that come to you after they've done it going, oh shit, what did I do? And then they sign something that maybe wasn't legit. How does that fall into play in Florida?
Yeah, I mean, so I heard from one litigator that does estate and trust litigation, and kind of says cynically, "Pay me now, pay me later," right?
Right.
And so you say in some degree, my approach is this: is that you can do your own taxes, no problem, right? If you make a mistake, you can file an amended return. You can do your own will, but then you die, you don't get a do-over. So that's really the circumstance that. And I understand everybody's in a different position and place. You want to have the document, you want to have it in place, but you don't want to spend a lot of money, et cetera. It's probably worth the time to at least find somebody to say, okay, am I set up? Am I set up right? Is there a way to avoid probate? Do I have to go through all the bells and whistles to make this happen? Maybe not in every situation. I mean, you can certainly have beneficiary designations, joint accounts and the like, and transfer and death designations on accounts that accomplish the same thing as a will, right? Or a trust, different risks and hazards, but the pros and cons should be given to you by competent counsel.
Yeah. And maybe they're open to a lot more dispute versus having, a proper setup through an attorney and like yourself.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, is so, some of the things that we see with a lot of folks coming down here now from out of state are, they have their estate plan. They may have just updated it in, Connecticut, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, wherever they're coming from at this point. And they say, do I need to redo this whole thing now that I'm in Florida? And a lot of the times that's not the case, but you should probably have it reviewed and updated, at least to say, listen, Florida law should apply to this now that you're a Florida resident. We also have quirks in Florida, obviously, with our laws,
right?
With our homestead laws, who can serve as the personal representative of your estate or executor, maybe that's the term back home. So those are things that we'll look at and take a look at, and maybe make minor updates.
Yeah, no doubt. So explain to me, we talked briefly about it. Explain to me like the living will. How does that work? How do we go about doing? Is it very complex? Is it something can be done fairly quickly? I know we discussed it a little bit previously, but if you could jump on that a little bit.
Sure thing. Well, you remember the Terry Schiavo case?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And Pinellas County, I believe.
Exactly.
Correct. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was a case where, I mean, not to get too into the weeds on all the legal issues, but that brought to the forefront the idea of somebody needing to have a living will. And the reason is because in that case, Terry Schiavo, she had an in-home accident, became incapacitated, was in a facility. And then one of the questions was, what were her wishes if she became incapacitated in this fashion, like permanent vegetative state, right? Would she want to be, continued on life support, artificial life support, or not? And since she didn't have a living will, that became a court hearing. And then there was evidence in court to say she did, and then evidence that she didn't, right? Well, your living will is your document where you're making your wishes known during your life while you have capacity as to what happens if you're in one of the three states: permanent vegetative state, end stage condition, or terminal condition. And then you say, if I'm in one of those conditions, these are the things that I want to be kept, or keep me alive or not keep me alive. And so that's really what that living will is.
Yeah. And I think we always think that we're going to have the ability to maybe reach over and sign something on the side of your bed, but that's just not, it's not going to be there, or it might not be there. You don't have that. And I think we're all guilty, unless you're in your type of business, to say, I'll be able to control that when that happens. So I think it's important to, again, I'm talking to myself here, get that stuff done and get it taken care of. So it's very important. Now, when, like you discussed a little bit, when should your plan, when you get your estate plan created and it's active, when should I update it?
So I like to say, take a look every, 3 to 5 years, right? So if nothing changes in your life or there are things that are still normal, every 3 to 5 years, just take a peek to make sure that we're, still within the laws that we had at the time that it was executed. Otherwise, life events. So, death of a partner, spouse, child, close relative, whoever your beneficiaries are, that should take a look. Marriage is another big one. Retirement is a big one. Somebody comes into an inheritance, should probably, look at that as part of their estate plan. Kind of a fun one, probably not a huge likelihood of it happening, but is winning the lottery.
Yay!
Yeah. So
we all dream about it.
if it happens, call your friendly estate planning lawyer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Chris. And the funny thing about that is we all get that ticket on that night. We're all like, I'm gonna win tonight.
Right.
Everybody else quit playing. We got no chance in hell of winning the damn thing, But if you don't play, you don't win. Exactly. That's what we say.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's why I spent $7,000 last. No, I'm just kidding. I spent like $2 here and there. And you just never know.
When those big Powerball or jackpots come up, and the odds are like almost 1 in 300 million, and then they say there's one winner of this $700 million jackpot, you go, they're going to be okay.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. They don't really have to worry about a lot of things, financially, I should say. But yeah, all the other problems are going to come up. So yeah, that's important to get that update, get everything done. Now, what's a good way to contact you, Chris, if they want to get something like this?
Sure thing. So website is www.probateandplanning.com. Telephone number is 239-325-5070. Email address is info@probateandplanning.com. And that's probably the best way to reach me.
Yeah, and we'll put some more of that information in the show notes on the podcast. And we have a lot of people listening, so give Chris a call. I'm sure if you'll take questions and things like that. And we're looking forward to you. I think you're going to look into probably doing a podcast of your own. I think that'd be real interesting. I think it'd be great. Chris is a 2011, right, graduate of Gain.
Exactly.
Here in Naples. So how was that experience? Did you like that?
Oh, I loved it. It was great. And I know we were talking about, Rich Hampton.
Rich.
Yeah. And it's that, he made Gain fun because he got us access in our class to, all the best that the sheriff's office has. So it's it was a great experience, great time. And, I call it Baby Leadership Collier. And, I think that's maybe okay to call it that, but it was, just a lot of fun, great experience.
Yeah. And I told you I went in 2008, class of 08 were great, a leadership collier. So it was great, but to go and do that law enforcement day, how did you like that? Did you go to the range? Did you get tasered? What did you do?
We it was fantastic. I mean, we shot some weapons. We shot, sniper rifle. I think it was, AR-15.
AR-15 probably, or a 308. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Very accurate, right?
Very accurate.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we also did the is it the simulation?
Yep.
Yeah. So
that's FATS machine.
Yes.
Yeah, it's go in and shoot. It's a little bit different, right?
Well, let me tell you. I utmost respect. Okay, and just a little editorialization on this is that you're presented with that scenario and you have to make a good shot or bad shot. And, your pulse rate's through the roof, your palms are sweating, and you go, yeah, this is left for the professionals. And
yeah.
So just utmost respect.
Yeah. And just give you a little scenario of how that happens. So what you do is you go into a room, you get a very real-like simulated firearm, and you are given basically a scenario on video, and it's pretty real, right?
Very real.
And you go to the fax machine, and then all of a sudden they'll run you through a couple different scenarios. One guy might pull out his wallet and you might shoot him, right?
Right.
Or someone might have a play gun, which you don't even know it's a play gun, or a knife, or, there's a lot of different scenarios. And I will tell you that it's a great experience, because when you watch the videos on TV or on YouTube or wherever, and a cop makes a decision that you would think, I would never do that, it changes your mind, because it's split-second decision. And these men and women are out there doing these decisions every day. And you know what's funny about it? You never hear about the decision that was made that the person didn't die or the cop did not shoot, right? 100%. You always hear about the ones that, maybe have been somewhat looked at as a bad shoot. And, it really gets your adrenaline pumped, right?
100%. Yeah. And that's something that, you wish more people could experience, just to have that understanding. And that's really where I think so much of the benefit of these, leadership programs is you really become an ambassador for the community, because you understand, you meet the it's the behind the scenes look at how the community works. And, I think locally for Collier County is that, everything just kind of works well and works naturally. And you go, well, how does it happen? Well, that's leadership and the chamber and gain, et cetera.
Yeah. And Sheriff Ramboski's fantastic about trying to get the community together and trying to get everybody involved. So it's real good. Now, I read too that you went to UF,
yes,
and Florida State.
Right. Yep.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
And when you watch football, what do you do?
Well,
you're probably one of those guys. I'm going to go with the team with the best record this year.
Well, let me tell you, between Florida State and Florida, I don't know. That's a horse race on that one.
Well, this year UF started out really good.
So I went Florida State undergrad.
Right.
So, I'm a Knoll.
Yeah.
Law school at St. Thomas in North Miami.
That's right. Yeah.
LLM and tax at Florida. Between both institutions, you get a great education. I met my wife at Florida State, and that year at Florida was one of the most difficult years for her, because that was the year that Florida in, was it 05-06, that they won the football championship and the basketball championship. So we're up there, and she's not happy. And so I'm like, okay, well, we'll get out of here as quickly as we can. So
you didn't tell anybody about your undergrad.
No.
So my daughter went to UF. So she's now she really proud of her. She graduated in 4 years with a master's, and she's working for Adobe and living in New York City.
Wow. Congratulations.
So, yeah, that's awesome. So UF's been good to us. So, and I lived in Tallahassee for about 6 months going to police academy. So I took a fond liking to FSU, and then, so I like Florida schools. I'm originally from Maine, but I like the Florida schools. I like, what they bring, and it's good. So anything else to add? I mean, I know you want to start a podcast. What do you have in mind for doing that? We're going to push that out and give you some information on that. But what's your goals on that podcast?
Yeah. So first off is I was thinking about the name, and I kind of settled on, I think, Planning Talk with Chris Price.
Okay.
And, I think it's kind of like your child is, you kind of get one shot at it, right? For the name.
Yeah.
And you may be able to change it, but you probably shouldn't, right? So
maybe throw in a middle name or something.
Exactly. So, the goal is really inform, educate, and entertain. So from that side, we're going to look at, kind of doing the same back and forth with other professional advisors. So financial advisors, trust officers, running through scenarios with clients that we have, even just kind of, made up scenarios. Okay, we have a husband and wife, they have 2 children, they have, potential, one spendthrift issue, one's really well off, we have assets in these places. What do we do? What does it look like? What are the planning considerations? And really just the idea is, try to answer the questions that I've answered probably hundreds of times for all the clients over time, is that, so that there's a one-stop shop for, okay, well, what is the trust? What is the plan? When should I update my plan? Or what are the, top 10 mistakes that I can make, by not planning, or something to that effect. So, it's really just a way to provide some education and outreach, and, have some fun.
Yeah. And just sitting here today, I learned a lot. Like, I better get my butt rolling. Right. And, don't wait around, because you never know and you can't predict the future. But hey, Chris, it's been a pleasure on the podcast. It's been awesome. I know it's been interesting. I know that for a fact. And just to learn a little bit about you and what you have going, and, we'll see you again back 239 Uncensored,
Awesome.
right?
Well,
All
thanks
right.
so much, Tim.
Yeah. And when we do it, we always do 239 Uncensored. We're out. So we'll do that. So 239 Uncensored, everything Southwest Florida and beyond. And we are out.